Well, hello, IDS 105 students, and welcome to week 5 here in the IDS 105 learning community. It's me, Melanie Shop, your IDS 105 learning community gal, just here with a quick video to tell you what is due in week 5 and how to find everything. So at this point, y'all, we are past the halfway point and we will be heading into the last couple of weeks of your IDS 105 course. So this is just a reminder, if you have struggled, fallen behind, there is still plenty of time to get caught up, and now is the time to reach out to your instructor and see what you can do to get the most points for your success in your overall grade for your IDS 105 class. If there are things that you have found that are going really well for you or some tips you want to share with your fellow students, please come on over to the IDS 105 learning community in SNHU Connect and share those tips, because I think it's always helpful when other students can learn from other students and see what is working for them, because many of you have similar lives outside of campus life, which maybe you are raising families, maybe you are working either in the home or outside the home. And so sometimes it can be just nice to hear from other students that might have similar experiences to you on how they're making time for their schoolwork, when they're doing their homework, or any helpful tips that you guys can learn from each other. That's the best part about going to college. Even in the online environment, you can always connect and get ideas from each other. So this week in Module 5, as always, you can find your assignments in your Brightspace classroom by clicking on Course Menu, Learning Modules, and then scrolling down to Module 5. You guys know the drill by now. You always want to make sure you click the blue and gets you to where you want to go. Review the Module 5 overview and learning objectives, and make sure that you review the content that's actually within the module, because there's a lot of helpful information to help you with the concepts you are talking about and learning about from week to week. As always, don't forget you can find your assigned reading or any videos that you need to watch underneath the required resources section. It outlines what you should be reading and which chapters in your textbook, any extra reading, and even some really helpful videos to really help hit the concepts and the tips that you are and strategies you're learning about all the way home. I will tell you that every term students talk about this, the power of vulnerability video. It is a little bit of a longer video, but it is worth the watch. So I definitely encourage you to give both of them a try. But if you're going to pick one, this power of vulnerability is a powerful thing to review. But as always, it says required. You should be watching them all. They'll give you some tips and tricks for your success. So here in week 5, you have a discussion assignment. As always, initial post is due by Thursday with a minimum of 2 responses to your classmates by Sunday. You can always work ahead earlier in the week as convenient for your schedule. This week, we're talking a lot about conflict and restorative practices. You'll understand that further once you review the module content and your required resources. But for the discussion, I think this is actually one of my favorite discussions, because it's so neat to see the uniqueness of what you guys share in the discussion board based off of picking a conflict situation that you've seen in films, television shows, or books. It's really kind of neat to see the different films, television shows, and books that you guys come up with and the conflict scenarios that you share. This is honestly one of my favorite discussions that we have here in IDS 105. It's a little bit of fun, but it also just really helps you guys understand the concepts and be able to apply them. So for your week 5 discussion, that first question is to give an example of a conflict situation you have seen in films, television shows, or books. And then the second part of your initial post is how could you apply restorative practices, which you're learning about this week, to the situation that you explained above. And then question 3 that you're going to answer is how could being vulnerable, having an open mind, and considering others help with navigating the conflict identified in this situation. Make sure you're using complete sentences, and examples are always helpful as you complete that initial discussion post. Again, initial discussion post due on Thursdays, peer responses, minimum of 2 responses to classmates due by Sunday, but you could always work earlier in the week as it works for your schedule. You also have your very last project draft being submitted this week that is part of your final project, that guidebook. So as y'all know, back in week 2, you picked a scenario, and we have focused on using that scenario and then experiences from personal life, work life, academic life to help you answer the questions from Module 2, Module 3, and Module 4. This week, you are still keeping that scenario in mind for Module 5. However, you also want to go back to those scenario profiles and make sure that you select a conflict that goes along with your scenario to help you answer the questions for this week, okay? So as a reminder, when you go through this assignment, it'll give you an overview. Underneath what to submit, you can always find the project template, but you can always just keep using the document you've been working with all term. It's kind of like a working, living, breathing document. You can find those scenario profiles with the extended information about the scenario and the conflicts by clicking on scenario profiles underneath supporting materials. When you do that, you will notice, for example, underneath the school scenario, you'll see an overview of this scenario, like back what you picked in week 2, and then you'll see these 3 conflicts listed underneath here. So for module 5, you want to stick with your same scenario, but pick one of these 3. So for example, when I went over the module 2 project draft with y'all, I wanted to choose the school scenario. And then for my conflict here in module 5, I think I'm going to do this conflict number 3, determining priorities. And that is going to help me answer my questions for module 5. So once again, when you open up that template, remember, these highlights are mine. It's just for me to kind of easily show you what's due from week to week. Remember at the top, you always wanted to have your scenario listed, which is just school, workplace, personal. But I also encourage you, not required, but I also encourage you to put your conflict up here too. Once you're in module 5, it can just be helpful as you work through your drafts and as your instructor's grading, it can be helpful just to see like, oh yeah, this is a scenario, this is a conflict they picked, because we're usually pretty sure, but sometimes depending on how you answer the questions, it could be between 2 different conflicts. So it's always helpful to just put that up there. You already answered part 1. You already answered part 2. We are focusing in on the last section of the template, which is part 3, communication strategies to navigate conflict. So as a reminder, you're using whatever scenario you picked in week 2 in addition to the conflict. Okay, so pick one of the conflicts under that scenario and then answer these 5 questions. The first one is to describe the components of the conflict represented in the scenario. Question 2, describe different interpersonal communication strategies that can be used in conflict resolution. Question 3, choose an appropriate communication strategy you employ in this scenario. Include an explanation of why you chose that communication strategy. Question 4, describe the potential challenges of communication in the scenario that you picked and the conflict. And question 5, describe the benefits and challenges of using restorative practices to navigate the conflict in this scenario. As always, I encourage you to utilize the academic support written feedback services as you finish up this draft and get a second set of thoughts on your draft before you submit it to be graded. If you get stuck, if you have questions, reach out to your instructor because it's just a really great way for them to help you answer your questions because y'all, as you know, right, as you know, they're the ones that are grading your work. So it's really important that you feel comfortable reaching out to them and asking questions for your success. Okay. That's all that's due here in week 5. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. And just remember, you got this.